geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and gittens, welcome to another curiosity-fueled episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, in which you get to ask me, a comic book professional of world renown, about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Before we get started, let me share something with you, tootle my own horn a little bit. Epicenter Comics, which is a comic book company I talk about a lot if you watch these videos, they specialize in reprinting the best in Italian comics in English. And they do some fantastic, very affordable, very reasonable editions. And they're putting this out, the Tex Author Collection Volume 1. It's 6 graphic novels, standalone graphic novels, some of them drawn by the absolute best of the European artists, Serpieri, Enrique Breccia, Alfonso Font, and many others. It's a terrific collection in a nice slipcase edition. And of course, I'm wow. It was on Kickstarter. I don't know if it's still available on Kickstarter. I'll put the link below. But I was really excited about it. And I got even more excited when I saw that one of the volumes is written by me. It's Cinnamon Wells, the standalone text story I did, formatted for European comic album size. And it's real nice. Art by Alberti. And I was honored to finally, after years and years of trying to wangle a way in to write text, to get the right text, and now finally, one of my 3 text stories will be appearing in English. So there you go. I couldn't be more thrilled if I won 3 Eisners. In fact, I am way more thrilled than with this. I'm just so happy to have been a part of a tiny itty bitty little part of Tex Willer's 80-year history. Okay, on with the questions. Rex Moss, now that you are a big-time screenwriter of Something Big or Bad Times 1 or something else, does that mean you're a member of the Screenwriters Guild of America? I'm currently enjoying Bad Times 2, and I think that the 2 heroes on a bireme are doomed. Yeah, I'm a big-time Hollywood writer right now. No, I'm not a member of the Screen Actors Guild because you have to earn, there's a minimum you have to earn writing screenplays. And on the screenplay I'm writing, I took a larger piece of the back end instead of a big advance, and it doesn't qualify me. And I don't think you automatically get to join. And you can be a big-time Hollywood writer, which I am not by any means a big-time Hollywood writer, but you can do that and not be a member of the Screenwriters Guild. Sylvester Stallone is not a member of the Screenwriters Guild for a variety of reasons. It's not Bad Times screenplay, although that is in play, as they say. Out in Hollywood, as is Something Big. They are both optioned, and there's some degree of excitement. Whether that comes to anything, one never knows. But neither of these are the ones that I wrote the screenplay for. The screenplay is an oddity. It's based on a comic book character and I created that has not been published yet, but. These producers got very excited by the concept when it was presented to them, and they wanted to make a movie of this character. But unfortunately, the movie they wanted to make couldn't be shot in the United States where the comic book is set. And so I proposed the idea of, rather than trying to adapt the comic to a foreign locale, why don't I write a direct sequel to the comic book that takes place in a foreign locale? And they liked that idea, and screenplay's been handed in, and we're currently talking about, obviously rewrites and all the rest of it. these guys very much are a great team, and they want everybody on board. They want everybody involved. So there's a lot of discussions with me about where we might place some of the action set pieces and things like that. But I think this is a first, that the direct sequel to a comic book will be a movie instead of a comic book. And of course, we'll probably make a comic book of the movie, but that remains to be seen. So I hate to tease you, but it's too early days to announce titles or who might possibly be playing the lead. It's all in play. It's all up in the air for right now. Although they assure me they are very anxious to get into production with this thing, and very pleased that I got the screenplay done much sooner than screenplay writers usually hand things in, although I was very dismayed at how long it took me to write it. I was hoping to have it done months ago, but they assure me that they weren't expecting it until sometime next year. So we're in good shape. And I swear it's the last screenplay I'll ever write. It was a nightmare. I enjoy it. I enjoy having written it. I think the end product is good. I'm finally happy with something I've written in that form, because I think I'm getting it now. How to write for movies as opposed to any other medium, particularly in the area of dialogue. But anxious to see what they do with it, and it's a first draft. They'll probably hand it off to another screenwriter, or two or three or four or a dozen. But that's the way things are. That's the way things go. You are a cog in the machine. Everyone is a cog in the machine when they work on a movie. Okay, Harold Pridemore. I found a site, PS Artwork, that sells Golden Age collections. I saw a few that were DC characters, Ray, Black Condor, and Black Hawk. I never read the Black Hawks, and they had like 11 volumes of it. Are they good war books? Also saw they had a Cowboy Ghost Rider. How were those books? PS Artwork is pretty cool. They do a really, really good job of restoring Golden Age comics and putting them into hardcover and softcover. Very handsome edition. So, if there's a character you've always wanted to read, never had a chance, this is good. They're not always so that cheap, but they're certainly affordable. But they put a lot of work into the restoration of these books. And as you can see here, if you're watching, slip cases, hardcovers, and they do what they call softies, which I think is an unfortunate name for a paperback, but they do them, and they're a little bit more affordable than the hardcovers. But, as far as Black Hawk goes, first of all, the Ray, Black Condor, Black Hawk, they were not DC characters. They were Quality Comics characters. And DC acquired all the characters somewhere along the line, and for the most part failed to renew copyright on a number of them, which unfortunately for DC. But Plastic Man was one of them. Plastic Man was a Quality character. G.I. Combat was Quality's war comic, and DC just took it and continued it, like they did with Black Hawk, continued it with the same numbering. And Black Hawk really isn't a war comic. It starts in World War II, and it's one of those, rah-rah patriotic comics with, bulletproof heroes. What separated from the rest was it had an international cast. You had an American, Black Hawk is Polish. The Poles in World War II were a big thing because, they had been conquered by the Germans, but there was a diaspora of Poles from Poland before the Germans fully occupied the country. And these Poles spread out over Europe. And a lot of the spy work, a lot of the espionage work done in World War II was done by Poles, expatriate Poles who couldn't return to their country. And of course, famously, the Polish aviation units and things like that. And Black Hawk, is a Pole. Then there's a Dutchman and a Frenchman. And, there's a international cast, which made Black Hawk different from a lot of the other war pastiches being written during the Golden Age. But it was never truly a war comic. And following World War II, it kind of becomes just a, anything goes adventure comic. But beautifully drawn. Chuck Dixon famously starts it, and then Reed Crandall does some absolutely gorgeous, there's beautiful, iconic covers, and some gorgeous artwork. for the series. So it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, it's a lot of fun and not particularly politically correct. My favorite of the stuff that PS Artwork is doing is the Black Canary series, Black Cat series. Black Cat was printed from the Golden Age, like World War II period into the 50s, and mostly drawn by Lee Elias, absolute comics master, and of like the Milton Caniff school. And I really like Black Cat. It's Black Cat and Plastic Man to me are the pinnacle of Golden Age comics because they're still readable today. Let's face it, most Golden Age comics are most of them are awful. And even the ones that were good weren't all that great, to read as an adult. You can imagine a 10-year-old boy in 1944 thrilled with these things. But some of them are rough sledding as an adult. Not so for Plastic Man and Black Cat. They still read, briskly paced and smart and funny and just, good stuff. It's cleverly written. So I'm myself buying all of the PS Artwork Black Cat restorations, and I'm anxiously awaiting their arrival so I can reread some of these stories fully restored, which is cool. Ghost Rider, the Western Ghost Rider from the 50s. Yeah, it's a great concept, and it had some great covers and stuff. This is not one of them. This is a Marvel thing from the 70s, but not so good in the story area. Like I said, so many Golden Age comics are pretty disappointing in the writing because they were written by guys who really didn't want to be writing comics. They were like newspaper men with some spare time on their hands, or pulp writers who needed to, pay the rent, and they really weren't that into it. And of course, there were no royalties or anything like that, so there was no incentive to do your best work or think too hard about it. And some Golden Age stories, and going all the way into the 50s, I sometimes think they just drag somebody in off the street to write them because they just don't make any sense. The stories are just idiotic, and the characters not terribly engaging. Particularly like a lot of the horror books. It was this horror craze beyond DC. I mean, Atlas published, magnitudes more horror comics than EC ever did, and Harvey was into it. Everybody was into horror comics, and you read them, and very few examples from those books stick out as anything like a classic readable comic. A lot of them. I was reading some stuff last night from some Atlas, and there were a few gems in the collection that I bought recently, but some of them, it's like, were these guys high when they wrote these? They just don't make any sense, or they're repetitive, or they stole the idea from something else and did a poorly executed job of plagiarism. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. Joe Alexander, as a fan of Westerns, I was wondering if you've ever read the Longmire novels by Craig Johnson or watched the Longmire television show. I love the show and really appreciate the integrity and intelligence of the lead character, Walt Longmire. The show is perfectly cast, shot, and directed. It has great stand-alone stories, but also excellent subplots and foreshadowing that pay off emotionally as the series progresses. If you have checked it out, I would love to hear your thoughts from a writer's point of view. This is I watched the series and I really enjoyed the series, but it was funny because this show showed up, I think, on the History Channel or A&E, I can't remember which, and it showed up after Justified. And when they marketed it, it looked like a dollar store version of Justified, and I just was not interested at all. And my wife checked out a few episodes and said, "No, the show's really good. You need to look at it." I was like, I got marketing, I had the same problem with Hell on Wheels. My wife checked that out and liked it. It took her forever to convince me to watch it because the initial commercials just looked awful. They really need to work on that. So anyway, she eventually said, "Well, just try the first couple episodes," and I did, and I really liked it. And then we continued to watch the further seasons together as I think it was Netflix picked it up. It was the number one show on either A&E or History. I can't remember where it ran. But it was the number one show on that channel, and they canceled it anyway. And Netflix picked it up, and of course had great success with it. And yeah, I liked it. I liked it all the way to the end. I didn't think it was such a great idea for him to become romantically involved with the Katie Sackhoff character. That bothered my wife and I, and we've looked at fan sites, and we're not alone. That bothered a lot of people. That was uncalled for. And apparently there's new Longmires in production. They're going to continue the series with the same actors. So I'll watch it. Maybe they'll make up for those regrettable final episodes. Okay. Francis Rodriguez. So is the 2025 Superman film going to save Hollywood? Is the 2025 Superman film saving Hollywood? Did the 2025 Superman film save Hollywood? I don't mean to be rude. He's just putting this in every tense possible because he wasn't sure when I would answer this question. So it didn't. It didn't save anybody. It didn't even save Warner's, and I don't think it did anything for James Gunn's reputation either. Just before I started recording this, I read an article on basically the final fate of the Superman movie, including marketing. This movie cost $350 million to produce. Now, after everything else, and after the movie theaters take their cut, Warner's got a whopping $308 million off of this. Don't look at the box office numbers; they're not the real numbers. So Warner's gets $308 million back on a $350 million investment. That's not good, folks. That's not even break even. Now, of course, they will eventually break even, but I don't know where, because I don't think DVD and Blu-ray sales are going to make up for that. I don't think this movie's going to gain them any new subscribers to HBO Max, so they're not going to make it up there either. So, maybe eventually they let Amazon have it and they can make a little cash there. But it broke even, which means it lost money. It lost money, and more than that, it signals the end. Finally, I mean, if every other bomb movie, if the Eternals and Marvels and, Potato Salad Man the movie, if all of them didn't warn Hollywood this cycle is over, this one does. It's a Superman movie, and it bombed. Despite millions of people going to see it. I mean, it largely bombed because of so much, they spent so much money on it. And I haven't seen the movie, but I can tell from the trailers, there's a lot of extraneous stuff in this movie that did not have to be there. You could have trimmed this budget down to $100 million, spent $20 million marketing it, and guess what? You would have had the same box office, exact same box office. Nobody would have stayed away because I'm not going to go see that. They didn't spend enough money on it. I'm not going to go see the Superman movie because they didn't cram enough superhero cameos into it. The average moviegoer going to see a Superman movie had no freaking idea who half of the characters that they had cameoing were. They're not comic fans. That's the thing about Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman is their audience is largely casual. They're not comic book fans necessarily, or they remember the characters from their childhood or adolescence. And adding all this crap that's happened over the last few years and adding characters they're not familiar with or barely remember or never cared about to begin with, just adds to the budget. You got to pay those actors and shoot those scenes and everything else. So you kind of lose the heart of it all. And they're going to have to make adjustments. All of Hollywood is going to have to make adjustments because they were all deeply, deeply, deeply in debt. Tens of billions of dollars in debt. And doing things like Superman movies that make no money, you're not going to help them. Now they're deeper in debt. I think, and it's obvious the superhero craze is over. I think when Avengers Doomsday meets the same fate as the Superman movie. Doomsday is reported to be $500 million budget. If you add another $200 million in marketing, which is what it's going to take to make people aware of this turkey, it's $700 million. It's going to have to make $2 billion to break even. That's never going to happen. You know that, I know that. As much as we love a good superhero movie, this one's not going to be a good superhero movie. All the indications are it's just going to be another, lame effort to recapture the glory of the past for the MCU. And I really don't see it happening. It's not that I wish ill, but the simple fact of the matter, there's mathematics and physics involved with movies. And when cycles end, when trends end, they end with a bang. And you got to get out. And they ended with a bang years ago. And a Superman movie that didn't make money, that's a bellwether, my friends. Because Superman is pretty much indelible. Now we're going to see, I think Batman and Spider-Man will survive this the same way that James Bond survived the collapse of the spy craze in the 60s. Batman and Spider-Man still have legs as long as they make quality entertainment based on those characters. They'll be around forever. My grandchildren will watch them. There'll be new movies for them. So, but in general, the superhero craze, the superhero cycle, it's finished. And some of it is a lot of the audience for it aged out. People that went to see the first Iron Man movie or the first Spider-Man movie are now, full-grown adults with kids of their own, and they're not rushing out to see the latest, MCU or DCU creation. They're not, they'll just wait till it comes to them, on streaming or whatever. So, yeah, there you go. Sad. It's very, very sad. And I just wonder, now what's going to happen to the slate of productions that James Gunn announced, a couple of years ago. I imagine, a lot of them are being cut back, canceled, put in turnaround. Turnaround is when Hollywood, it's like a Hollywood no. They're afraid to tell you your movie's never going to get made. So they go, well, we're going into turnaround. And they put all the materials they have up on a dusty old shelf and leave it there forever. All right, next question. Joshua Ignatowski is back. May you please talk some more on the importance of knowing the difference between writing for kids and writing down to kids. Well, if you talk to kids like they're morons, then you have failed. Kids know they're being pandered to. We all have that aunt who shows up for the holidays and talks to you in baby talk and squeezes your cheeks and tells everybody how adorable you are. And all you can do is stand there and turn red because you're like 16. So we all know what being talked down to is. And when you're talking down to kids, you're simplifying your story and you're simplifying the language of it and everything else. And you're facing a tough crowd. No stand-up comic ever faced a tougher crowd than a bunch of kids at the library during story time, because they're already prepared for disappointment. They're anxious to be entertained, but they realize that this might not happen based on the book chosen by the librarian or chosen by their teacher to read. And of course, they instantly check out as soon as they whiff any sense of pandering, simplified language, a message being hammered home, with too much fervor. It's like, yeah, we're supposed to, oh my gosh, we thought we were going to have a fun story read to us, but no, we have to learn something from this story. And then you just start looking out the window or, doodling in your notebook, because, you're checked out, and kids are tough. They want story, they want plot, and they're smart. They want it smartly told. They want it to be, clever but not arch. And once they learn to read themselves, and once they, as human beings walk around and talk to people and hear things on TV and, the internet, all the rest of it, and they learn the language, the nuances, everything else, they pick up on it pretty quick because, kids create their own patois, they create their own language amongst themselves. So they pick up pretty quick. And if you dumb it down, they're going to know in a heartbeat. Now, when the other kids were reading, like the usual, we had to read stuff in school, for the program, I'm reading comic books on the side. I missed a lot of school when I was a kid because I was sick a lot. But I'd read at home. I just read comic books. And when I would get back to school, I would ace all of the reading tests that I had to ace in order to continue on. Because there we go, you haven't been to school in months. You're probably just some, barely literate. So they would give me comprehension tests to make sure I was properly placed in a grade, and I would just blow them away. I mean, first and second grade, I was reading on a sixth grade level. The sixth grade level is what newspapers are written at. And all thanks to Stan Lee. Stan Lee just grew my vocabulary by magnitudes. So I was, and reading comprehension, all the rest of it. Hey, no problem. I just blew them all away. The only problems I had in reading at school is when I got bored, and I had to. We had different reading groups, and I was always in the advanced reading group, and inevitably I would get knocked down to the next level because I was failing the comprehension tests because I was so bored with the material that they had us reading that I was barely paying attention to it. My mind would wander while I was reading. And my mother had to explain this to my teachers over and over again. He's bored. You should see what he reads at home. But, I'm not alone. Every kid is like that. And guys like Dr. Seuss got it. I mean, Yertle the Turtle, there's a lesson there about power, about the power of the individual, teaching you not to let other people tell you what to do. Other people push you around. You have a voice, and you have a right to speak your mind. And as a kid, I remember this being read to us in class. We all got it. But Seuss doesn't hammer it to you. He just tells you a story about a bunch of turtles, and one of them is a real prick, and he wants all the other turtles to stack up so he can be top turtle. And then one of them finally says, "Hey, I've had enough of this crap. I'm not doing this anymore." We all got it. Now, we couldn't articulate the lesson because we were kids. We couldn't, but we got it. We got it. We said, "Yeah, don't succumb to bullies. Don't bend the knee. If you know something's not right, you speak up." And we got the lesson, and because the teacher understood that, that we got the nuances of the story. We got the message of the story. Without Dr. Seuss, he's just telling you his fun, funny, goofy, chaotic story. He's not letting you know that you're learning something, And our teacher at the time, this probably isn't true today, at the time was wise enough to just let us absorb the story and take the lesson from that instead of explaining the story to us. Because I think it was second grade. Our second grade teacher, man, she was on the ball. She was smart, and she knew just by looking at our faces as she read the story. She says, "Yeah, they're getting this. They're getting it," and she left it there. And that's how it's what you do with kids. And as far as language, they want to dumb down the language. Winnie the Pooh, a bear of little wit. Kids like that language. It's charming, and it makes them feel sophisticated, and they get it. Milne wrote in a more elevated but not stilted style. He used words and language and things like that were elegant, but still simple enough for a child to get. He didn't, he didn't blow the vocabulary out and with a bunch of 25-cent words. But you get the idea behind, and the stories are fantastic. They're simple stories. There's not really a lot of lessons there, except don't be a glutton like Pooh. But there's Pooh is written in a sophisticated enough style that these stories are still entertaining to be read as an adult. I mean, Milne is up there with, Arthur Conan Doyle and Woodhouse and Evelyn Waugh and writers like that for use of language. And that's why Pooh survives to this day, because the stories are fun to read and kids like hearing them read to them. And that's all good stuff. So it's just like, I always imagined when I was writing comics, when I was writing Batman and Robin and things like that I always imagined my reader as a precocious 10-year-old. And a precocious 10-year-old is a lot smarter than most adults. And that's what you gotta go by. You gotta think, okay, and the myth of attention span in kids that's stupid. Kids have a great attention span until you bore them. I mean, remember when you were a kid? I remember when I was a kid, I could watch ants for hours. My level of concentration. If I was playing a complicated game, it's my full concentration on that game. My attention span was just fine until, you either started boring me or trying to teach me math. So, that's it. Just don't treat the kids like kids. Treat them like really, really smart adults who suffer no fools. Oh man, twin spin coming your way. Joshua's back with, what would you say are some unique words the Philly dialect has? Well, I'm going to teach you how to talk Philly. Maybe my accent will even come back during this. Okay, the first word is wooder. You can always tell someone's from Philadelphia area because they use the word wooder. Now, what is wooder, you say? It's the universal solvent. It's the substance that covers 3/4 of the planet. It's the stuff that comes out of your tap when you turn it on. You bathe and shower in it. Yes, it's water. But in Philadelphia, it's wooder. Okay, here's another common way you can tell someone's from Philadelphia. If they talk about the Eagles, if they wonder what the Eagles are going to do this year, are the Eagles going to choke like they usually do? Are you going to the Eagles parade? Did you watch the Eagles last night? And of course, the Eagles are Philadelphia's NFL franchise. The Eagles. Okay, now, how about some phrasing? First we'll introduce the word yo. 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 Yo can mean almost anything. Yo is like cheers to the British. It can mean thank you. It can mean hello. It can mean what you're talking about. It could mean get away from me. It can mean almost anything. And let's use it in a sentence. Yo, yo, yo. This is yo, yo, yo. You gotta jam them together. You gotta jam your yo's together. And that is an expression of dismayed surprise or anger. And I remember once when my wife and I were dealing with something with our oldest boy, and he was at that age. He was being a little bit difficult. And I started to lose my temper. And I went, yo, yo, yo. And he said, why are you talking like a black guy? I said, black guy? I'm from Philadelphia. We invented yo. So use it sometime when someone disappoints you or suggests something that you object to. Yo, yo, yo. Let's go with another. How about a conversation in Philly? Common conversation might begin with "Youngry," which it means, hey, do you want to get something to eat? You hungry? And the proper response to that is "Mungry." Okay, so you got "Youngry," "Mungry," and the response to that, of course, is "Squeak." And when you go to eat, what are you going to get? You're going to get a cheesesteak, loaded. Got to have it loaded. Got to have fried onions. Got to get them. Peppers, mushrooms, if you're of that desire, or a hoagie. Vinegar and oil only. Put mayonnaise in a hoagie. You could start a fight. So there you go. Try that out on your friends. You've learned a little bit of Philadelphia. All right, triple spin. Woohoo! Joshua is back with, got a favorite type of weather? If so, what kind and why? We're all over the map here today. I'm like everybody else, fall weather. Of course, I live in Florida, so I don't get to experience this anymore, as my wife reminds me over and over again. But yeah, I really, I think we all like that first snap of cold in the air and the scent of burning leaves and, all the rest of it. And, change of colors. The only change of colors in the seasons we get here in Florida are the license plates. They change every fall and spring. So, okay. Comic 616, as your Marvel Savage Tales will soon be reprinted, it will. Fantagraphics is going to do a really nice hardcover of all the Savage Tales, the reboot, the 80s version. Anyway, I'm interrupting Comic 616. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask you for some details about Savage Tales Volume 2, Number 7, and the story Cameron. As this comic has a family resonance for me, I'd like to know more about the conception. Was it your inspiration, a taste for the concept of Foreign Legion developed before writing comics? I'd like to point out that Ron Wagner's level of historical detail is remarkable. Yes, for those of you who don't know about the Battle of Cameron, it was April 30th, 1863. This is a few months before the Battle of Gettysburg in our Civil War here in the United States. And France was involved in Mexico. Napoleon III had installed Maximilian as the Emperor of Mexico. He's an Austrian nobleman. For some reason, they put him in to run Mexico. There's always a power vacuum going on in Mexico, coups and revolutions and counter-revolutions. And into one of these vacuums steps the Napoleon III to basically make Mexico a protectorate, a colony, whatever. Bad decision for France because the Mexicans didn't appreciate that. Cinco de Mayo is a commemoration of the final Mexican victory over the French, driving Maximilian out. Just if you didn't know that. And it's largely only celebrated here in this country. The Mexicans don't make that big deal out of it. But Battle of Cameron, 65 French Foreign Legionnaires end up on a patrol, and they get trapped up against 2,000 Juaristas. And these are regular Mexican troops and irregular Mexican troops. Imagine a bunch of guys on horseback with sombreros, and you get the picture. And they basically trapped these 65 legionnaires in a place called Cameron de Tejada. And it was this little fortified hacienda pictured here. And they were up against, as I said, 2,000 troops. They were led by a French Foreign Legion captain named Jean d'Anjou. And they fought the 2,000 to a standstill over and over and over again. And eventually succumbed. They were just overwhelmed by numbers. But these 65 guys each killed an average of 5 enemy. I mean, the Mexicans lost a lot of men that day to these guys. And most of them died, including Jean d'Anjou. But some were taken captive and eventually traded for other prisoners and made it back to France. You said you had an ancestral connection to this. I assume it's one of the survivors, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, this event is commemorated in French Foreign Legion history. It is like a big deal, and they celebrate it each year with a ceremony at French Foreign Legion headquarters. And it's always fascinated me. If you listen to these videos before, you know I love a good siege story. And so I'm going to suggest this for Savage Tales number 7. I suggested to Larry Hama, thinking it would be a good story for John Severin. John Severin would really dig drawing this. But it ended up with Ron Wagner. And I got to say, I was just happy. Because Ron's a terrific storyteller, and he cared about doing the homework, and he cared about getting it right. And yes, it was my idea. I pitched it to Larry. He said, "Yeah, go for it. Make a great 8-page story." And and also it does grow out of an interest I've always had in the French Foreign Legion ever since I was a kid, watching Beau Geste and reading books about the Legion when I was a kid. And so it's something I really want to do. And I said, Ron did a terrific job. I'm just as happy with Ron's stories as I would have been with Severin's. And as you can see, if you're watching this, the detail is fantastic. Storytelling, panel composition, all the rest of it. It's just absolutely top drawer. And now, as far as the research and how Ron got things right, I was already a collector of Osprey books at the time, but Osprey is a British publisher, does these terrific visual guides, visual references for hobbyists of different military eras, different uniforms and weapons and all the rest of it. It's a marvelous series of books. If you've never seen them, and there's hundreds of them covering every military encounter you could possibly imagine. But they had not gotten to the French Foreign Legion in Mexico in the Maximilian era to this point. So the only reference that I could find that was viable was this McCoy book called Cameroon. And McCoy is a long-running series in France about an ex-Confederate soldier and his adventures across Texas, the Southwest, and into Mexico. And this was well-researched visual aid for Ron. It's a French book, so obviously they were interested in accuracy. So I just Xeroxed a whole bunch of pages from this and sent them to Ron to use them, to get things right, because that was important to me, and it was real important to Larry that we do the research and get stuff right. I mean, it's how I got the job with Savage Tales, is I assured Larry that I would do the homework, that I was as crazy and geeky about history and getting things right as he was, and I quickly proved that to him. So I continued to work on that. So yeah, this Savage Tales collection is out next month from Fantagraphics. So go to Amazon or go to your local comic book shop and order it, because you're going to want it. It's got Severin, and I've got some great Just Go covers, and Ron Wagner and Gray Morrow, and the first Nom stories by Michael Golden. It's got some great Sam Glansman stuff in there. John Buscema. I mean, it's a terrific collection of stuff. So it's coming out next month, and I don't think I'm going to see any royalties from it. I don't care. I just want people to see these stories, because I think this was a terrific magazine, and it's a shame it ended with only 8 issues. That's a whole other story about why it didn't succeed as a magazine, and it wasn't any of our fault. We didn't do anything wrong. Anyway, if you have questions, suggestions, the questions this week were terrific. On any subject, including passing of the seasons and weather, please send them to BrunoBookstore@gmail.com. BrunoBookstore@gmail.com is the best way to reach me. I want to thank you all for listening, watching, recommending this, liking, subscribing, whatever you did. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all down the road.